Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Bava Metzia Daf Mem Gimel, starting on the top line of Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, and we'll go to the end of the parak of Parak Hamafkid, and then we're in Parak Hazahav. Whatever. We'll do great.
Stating the facts.
Just stating the facts, just how it is. So this little calm before the storm. So let's get started. We have a new Mishnah here. Hamafkid Mos Eitzel Shulchani. Maybe not the best person to ask to hold on to your money. This guy is a money changer. It's the Kaspomat in Israel, the place that says ATM, cash in, cash out. You're walking into one of those bulletproof glass stores. Please watch my money. So there, it depends how you package your money. Im tzerurin, if everything is wrapped up and bundled up in a Ziploc and a whatever kind of a bag, it's all bundled up. Lo yishtamesh b'hem. The shulchani is not allowed to use that money. It's obviously earmarked to be yours, and you're supposed to watch it, but not allowed to use it as part of your daily grind of spending and trading dollars. Lefichach, therefore, because the shulchani is not allowed to use the money, im avdo, if it gets lost, eino chai ba'achrayusa. Then, because he's not even allowed to use it in the first place, if it gets lost, he's pater, eino chai ba'achrayusa. However, mutarin, a very difficult word, if the money was given out loosely, meaning if you just gave a stack of cash, a stack of coins, so then yishtamesh bahen, then the assumption is that the shulchani is in fact allowed to use it, and as part of his, he can take your dollars and spend them. He has to keep in his ledger how much money he's holding for you. So let's say I gave him 100 singles. So if I give him 100 singles, he's going to use the 100 singles. The next time somebody comes in with a 20, he's going to give out 20 singles and trade it out. It's not that the bills are kodesh. He has to give me back my money when the time comes. But in that case, because he is allowed to use my money, and therefore he would be achroi if something happened to the money. All of this is in regards to a shulchani, someone who specifically works with money. In contrast, 5 lines down, etzel balabayis, if in fact you gave me your 100 singles or tzerurin, however you packaged it, and you gave it to me as a regular homeowner. I'm not a shulchani. I'm not a money changer. I'm a regular guy. So then, vein tzerurin uvein mutarin, however you package the money to the balabais, whether or not it's packaged up or whether or not it's just loose change. Lo yishtamesh ban lefichach imavdo eino chai b'achrayusan. So now we have the bookends. We have the shulchani who has a distinction between tzerurin and mutarin. And we have a balabais where there's no distinction between tzerurin and mutarin. But what about a chenveni? What about a store owner? Now, on the one hand, the store owner is not a balabas, but he also doesn't specifically dabble with money. He has money as a part of his life. Obviously, people pay for things in the store. I don't know if you saw this. There was a gorgeous sign from Eretz Yisrael in one of the stores there that says, if in this difficult time you're not able to afford food, just take it. Don't tell any of our staff. Take the food and leave. This is a gorgeous, sensitive, and of course, Ruba Deruba people are yashar. They come to the front and they pay. And the people who talk a need, it was really beautiful. I'll send the picture around. It was absolutely stunning. It was like a makolet in Israel. Yeah, just so sensitive, so sensitive. So what about a chenveni as it relates to the dinim that we're discussing? Do we say that there's a difference between tzerurin and mutarin, yes or no? Says the Gemara, chenveni kebal abayis tivir Mary. Behuda omer chenveni keshulchani. Machlokas tanoim as to how we view a chenveni in regards to the distinctions of tzerurin and mutarin. And says the Gemara, as the Gemara opens, mishum tzerurin lo yishtamesh bahen. You're giving the money to a shulchani. This guy's whole asek is dollars. What does he care if it's in a Ziploc bag? It's money. That's his whole world. Who cares if you give back the same dollars? Why would we make a distinction like this? So Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yehuda, answer number 1, B'tzurin v'chasum and shanim. It's different. We're talking about a case where it's signed. It was written on it, please don't use, right? Whatever the Lashonos were, it was written in a way where it was clear that you should not be using it. However, Rav Mari Omar, B'kesh or Mashun, it had a unique knot on it. It was a unique knot, one that indicated, of course, a degree of privacy. I don't want you to use this money. All of that is approaches 1 and 2. However, Ika de Amre, boy Rav Mari, Kesher Mashuna Mai. According to some, we're asking a kasha about a Kesher Mashuna, yes or no. If in fact we see a Kesher Mashuna on the sack of money that you gave to the shulchani, does that matter? And here we say teku. So it's a machlokas about that. We don't know what it means. We had said mutarin that if there was loose change, then yishtamesh bahen. And here we have a very unique machlokas. If in fact we say that yishtamesh bahen, like we said in our Mishnah, that if it's loose change, that the shulchan is allowed to just use that money as part of his day-to-day money efforts, and then just as long as he pays back the volume of money, then all is well and good. That's fine. But that also kind of puts him in the bucket of being a shoel a little bit, like he's actually using the money, and therefore, Amar Rav Huna v'afilu ne'ensu. Even in the case of ones, what would we say? Take a look at Rashi. It says 6 lines down, v'afilu ne'ensu ka'amar masnisin d'chai b'achariyusan v'afilu lo nishtamish b'hen d'mehashta hab'shoel alayhu. Rashi gives us the halachic status of the shulchani. If I give you, the shulchani, money, and I give you loose change, you are a shoel from the moment I drop that on your table. And therefore, if there's an ones, you're responsible. Why? Because it's not a regular hafkada. It's a hafkada that I know you're going to use. So you're being a shoel. You're only using the money to swap things out. It's not a net loss, friend. It doesn't matter. You're now a shoel. Says the Gemara, how can it be that that in the case of ones, that afilu nensi you're going to be chad? The Gemara says va'avdoktani. The Mishnah doesn't speak about ones; it speaks about aveda. Says the Gemara, kidei Rabba. The Amar Rabba. We saw this Gemara earlier in the Maseches. It says on Daf Chav Tes. We'll see it again in another 15 blad. Nignevo belistin mezuyin. When we talk about geneva, it's talking about forceful types of listim. And avdom, when we talk about a lost item, shatava svina sobayam, even an ones type of aveda, and therefore it's okay for Rav Huna to understand our Mishnah this way. However, Rav Nachman did not understand our Mishnah this way, and we're going to see two kashas on this machlokes. But here's the second half of the machlokes. Rav Nachman Amar, no, nensu lo. No, our Mishnah is not speaking about a case of onus. Our Mishnah is only talking about a case of the person having a degree of responsibility, but he's not actually a shoel. Amar le Rava le Rav Nachman, I don't understand. Didcha da amras nensu lo. According to you, who says that had there been an ones in our Mishnah with the shulchani, he would not be chayev. Alma lo have shoel alayhu. But the problem is that if he's not a shoel, ishoel lo have, then guess what? Shomer sachar nami lo have. And if that's true, then how could you be chayev on aveda in the Mishnah? Manavshach. Either you have enough possession of the item that you're a shoel, and therefore you could also be a shomer sachar, or you're not a shoel and you can't be a shomer sachar. Which one is it? Kasha on Rav Nachman. So the Gemara says, Amar le. Rav Nachman would answer, Bahamo dinalach dehol v'nehene mahane. Here he says it really depends on what's going on in regards to what benefit you have. Because the shulchani has a benefit to this money, that if he wanted to use this money to buy something that he otherwise couldn't have afforded, we would have said that that's a benefit. Then you can enter into the space of shomer sachar, and that's how Rav Nachman threads the needle. And the language of Aveda in our Mishnah is specific. And you're taka not a shoel, you're only a shomer sachar. That's why they distinguish between a socher and a shoel. Between a shomer sachar, I should say, and a shoel. So really, what's happening in our Mishnah is that there's a machlokes in the Amoraim between Rav Nachman and between Rav Huna and Rav Nachman in regards to whether the shulchani in our Mishnah is a shomer or a shoel, a shomer sachar or a shoel. So it says the Gemara halfway down, Eisvei Rav Nachman the Rav Huna, kasha. The Gemara asks against Rav Huna. Let's remember that Rav Huna said that Rav Huna said that afilu ne'ens. Rav Huna said that our guy is a shoel, and if there's an ones, he's going to be held accountable. Says the Gemara, hamafkid mos eitzel shulchani. But this case is different, actually. Why is this case different? Take a look at Rashi, a quarter of the way down. Dibur hamaschil hamafkid mos. End of the line. Rashi says gizbar shehifkid mos hektish. I'm the gizbar, I'm the treasurer of the Beis HaMikdash, and I have coins, and I put them in your shulchani. However, kasavar shehein shelo, I gave the wrong money. So now we have a concern about me'ila, because now we have hektish dollars that I gave to the shulchani by accident, and if there's me'ila, who's held accountable? So let's go back inside the Gemara, halfway down. What's the kasha and Rav Huna? Rav Huna had said that afilu nensu, that the shulchani in our case is considered a shol and he's fully achroi. So says the Gemara, mafkid mos etzel shulchani im tzerurim lo yishtamesh bahen. If the money that the gizbar gave to the shomer is all wrapped up, he cannot use them. Lefichach im hotzi lo ma'ala gizbar. And therefore, because the shulchani is really not allowed to spend this money, if in fact he does spend this money against the rules, he's the one who did me'ila and not the gizbar, because he spent the money without permission. Mutarin, however, if the gizbar gave over coins, a stack of change loose, without it being contained, yishtamesh behen, then of course the shulchani is allowed to do that, and then the shulchani did nothing wrong, and therefore lefichach imhotzi mo'al hagizbar, because the shulchani did exactly what halacha would have expected him to do, no problem, and therefore the me'ila is on the gizbar. This is the brisa, and this brisa can be found in the Tosefta in Maseches Me'ila. And the Gemara here analyzes the brisa as follows, a little bit more than halfway down on Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, heading to the Mishnah. V'i amris afidu ne'ensu. If Rav Huna was of the opinion that the Shulchani in our Mishnah is even going to be held accountable in a case of ones, as would be a shoel, my iria hotzi, then we shouldn't have made the distinction in the brisa of hotzi and lo hotzi, of the gizbar, of the shulchani giving out the money. Afilu lo hotzi nami. Even if the shulchani never spent the money, he would still have violated me'ila. You're not allowed to have that money. So Omar le Rav Huna would have responded, Hu adin afal gabda lahotzi. I agree with you, says the Gemara, that even though there is no need for distinguishing between hotzi and not hotzi in the brisa by hektish, it doesn't matter. But I did the tana resha hotzi, tana seifa nami hotzi. Oh, so says the Gemara, your question is perfect, and we embrace your question and we answer it by saying that there is no chiyuv to say hotzi in the brisa. We only did it for the sake of keeping the Mishnah symmetrical. That brings us to a new Mishnah, 2/3 of the way down on Mem Gimel Amud Aleph. Hasholeach yad b'pikadon. Shliach yad b'pikadon means that I, the shomer, kind of touched your stuff. I wasn't supposed to. You gave it to me. I'm like looking at it, trying to pick it up. I'm messing around with it. I'm not a thief necessarily, but I am kind of in violation a little bit. I should not be touching the pikadon that I'm watching. So it says the Gemara, if something happens while you're doing this, while you're sholeach yad, very difficult line that we're going to have to analyze in the Gemara. He says it depends on what you did, and you'll be chayav to pay the losses and the gains, whatever the case may be. Again, we'll analyze more in the Gemara. He says, no, we only look at the time of hotzah. We don't know what that means either. Rabbi Kiva Omer kishas hatvia. This is the easiest of all the shitas, that it's kishas hatvia, that it's at the time that the bal pikadon comes to claim the item from you. At that moment, that is when we say we assess what you owe. A difficult mission. Omar Rabba says, Haiman de gazal chavisa de chamra mechabre. If a person steals a barrel of wine from one of his friends, and me'ikara shav yazuza, its original cost was 1 zuz, hashta shavya arba, and now it is worth 4 zuz. So, if tavra o shasya, if you broke it or you drank it, well, what's it worth right now? Mishalem arba, arba, you have to pay 4. Isbar memela, if it broke on its own, you did not do anything to it. So then because you weren't involved with it, mishalim zuza, then you only pay its original cost. It says the Gemara, my taima. Why the distinction? The Gemara says, Kevan di isa, had the barrel that was broken or the one that you drank was still here, hadra lamar be'ena, I would have given it back the way that it was. Hahi shaita de kashasi le, o de katavar le, kagazal mine, at the time that you drank, or at the time that you broke it, that was when the theft happened. That's when it was worth 4 zuz. Vitznan, kol hagazlan mishalman kishas hagzela, and therefore you have to pay 4. And in the case of isbar memela mishalim zuza, when it breaks on its own, we say that you're obligated to pay a zuz. Why not? Why aren't you paying 4? Why are we going back to the moment of the theft and not when you actually drank it? My time, ahashta lo avid lo v'lo midi, because you didn't do anything. You didn't intervene. When you stole the item, it was worth 1 zuz, and you did not do anything active. The fact that the market fluctuated since you, that's not your problem. It's isbar memela, broke on its own. We therefore make this distinction. This is not something that our brains like. You stole my item. Right now, I'm out 4 zuz. So, but the din is not that way. If it's isbar memela, you didn't do anything wrong. So what was it worth on the day that you gave it to me? So now we can understand at least the framing of the machlokas in our Mishnah. When a gazlan, or when a shomer has to pay, what moment do we look at? Do we look at the moment that it was entrusted to him where it had value X? Do we look at the moment when it left his property, which is value Y? Or do we look at the moment of the tvia, which could be altogether another value, which is value z? It's hard to assess. And the Gemara already makes a distinction that according to at least the Tanakama of our Gemara, we have to distinguish between what you did as the person who affected the kli. If you stole the kli, if you drank it, if you broke it, so then we have to look at the right now. You broke it in the now. Your activity was now 4 zuz. You're done. But if you didn't do anything, your last interaction with the barrel that's sitting in your basement was 4 months ago. It was worth a zuz. Then that's all you have to pay. Yes, it's not comfortable for us, but it really does make sense when you pull it apart. My timer, because you didn't do anything. Amai komachai. Why is it that you'd be chayiv at all in that case? Says the Gemara, shaita de gazla, shaita zuzu hushavia. When you stole this barrel, it was worth 1 zuz. You didn't touch it since you stole it. Okay. So your last activity, basically, according to this mahalech, we look at when your last activity was with the item. If it was 6 months ago, 4 months ago, when it was worth 1, that's what you pay. If it was 3 months ago, it was worth 2, then you pay 2. And today, if you touched it, it's worth 4, and you broke it, and you pay 4. Whenever you last interacted with the item that you stole, that is how we measure you. Says the Gemara Tanan, how do we then learn our Mishnah? Our Mishnah wanted to explain the Shita of Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel Omrim Kishas Hotza. What does that mean? Kishas Hotza. My Kishas Hotza. Ilema Kishas Hotza min ha'olam. If you want to say it's from when it left the world, namely from when you ruined it, so then uvemai, how are we measuring? Ibechaser, if you're talking about the guy paying the lesser value of what it's worth right now, that makes no sense. If I break your item and I'm now paying what it's worth after the breaking, that pashat's not mistaber. Mi'ika lamando amar. Who would ever say such a thing? Obviously, that doesn't make sense. And v'hatnan, after all, kol hagazlan mushalman kishas hagzela. You should not be paying the new lost price. You should be paying the original valuable price, whatever it was. And v'ibi yeser, and if what you're saying is that there's an increase in price and that's what you have to pay, well then Beis Hillel is no different than Beis Shammai, because that was Beis Shammai shita in the Mishnah b'chaser v'yeser, and therefore hainu Beis Shammai. So how then do we understand the shita of Beis Hillel who says kshas otzah? That takes us to the top of Mem Gimel Amud Beis, where we have 4 answers to this question to try and understand what kshas otzah means according to the shita of Beis Hillel. Top line El Pshita. Says the Gemara, Kshas Hotzah mi Beis Bailim. It's from the time that it left the home of the original people. Rashi says at the top of the page, Dibra Maskel El Pshita, he says Kshas Hagzela. And what we don't see in the Gemara is what the machlokas is between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. The Gemara here just says we're explaining what Beis Hillel means. Rashi fills in the gaps. Beautiful Rashi. David and I were just talking about before shiur about how even for us, and we're the motivated chevra, Rashi is very hard to understand sometimes. But this time he kind of gave us the layup. He filled it in for us. It would be so hard to understand. And Rashi says, if we say that kishas hotzah means mi beis bailim, so then what's the machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel? Rashi says beautifully, uvi yeser pligi. They're arguing about a case where the cost goes up. To ka'amre Beis Shammai, second line of Rashi, im hukra, if the price goes up, yelake l'shalim kshas hotzah mina olam. Then you get the slap on the wrist, yelake. You get, it really means malkos. You get hit. What does it mean? You get dinged. Is probably the best English word to say that you have to pay kshas hotzah mina olam from when it was ruined. And Beis Hillel argues and says, amre kshas hotzah mi beis bailim. No, we go back to the time from when it was taken from the home of the bailim. So says the Gemara, I understand what you're saying. I understand that this is a possible answer, but that poses another issue. Because on the second line of the Gemara says, Lema, that would then imply that Rabba da'amar kibei Shammai. Now, if we were to look back on Mem Gimel Amud Beis, at the open of the Gemara, 12, 15 lines from the bottom, it told us a story about Rabba. And it says that it's yeser and chaser, that it depends on the cost, depends on what you did. So says the Gemara, if what you're saying is that really Beis Hillel says that Kshas Hotzah is talking about mi Beis Bailim, and really the din of Rashi of Beis Shammai is Yeser is X and Chaser is Y, that implies that Rabbah holds like Beis Shammai, which is impossible. because Beis Shammai ain't no Mishnah. We don't paskin like Beis Shammai. So, and Rabbah was well past Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel, and well past the moment in history when we decided we will not be holding like Beis Shammai. So this just can't be. You have the wrong explanation of the machlokes Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. So we need to try again. What's kashas hotzah? So says the Gemara, Omar lach Rabbah, really beyeser kule alma lo pligi. Unlike our previous answer, where Rashi filled in the gaps, that the machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel is beyeser when there's an increase in value, that's not true. Ki pligi bechaser. What we're talking about is when the price goes down. Beis Shammai savre shlichus yad. Remember, our Mishnah is all about shlichus yad. That when the shomer puts his hands on the item, eino tzricha chisaron. When the shomer puts his hands on the items, we don't need to lower we don't need to detract from the item in order to be mechayev, the guy who is sholeach yad. You're not allowed to do that. It's aser. And the chichaser, and when in fact there was a reduction of cost, birshusa didei chasar, it lowered its price in the property of the gazlan. Uves hillel sabre shlichus yad tzricha chisaron. That's not correct. In order for the shomer to become a gazlan, there has to be a detraction in the cost of the item that he's touching. The chichaser, when the price went down, it's birshusa demare chaser, and that's what they're talking about in our Mishnah. And if you bring it back to our Mishnah, we could already understand a little bit more. Back in our Mishnah, if we're talking about the case like we just said, in the case that's chaser, so if you look in our Mishnah, Beis Shammai will always go according to chaser and yeser, and Beis Hillel will say, no, I disagree with you, that when it comes to a chisaron, it's always kshas hotzah, from the time that it left the property of that particular person. So says the Gemara, that also does not work. Elahada Amar Rava, but the problem is that elsewhere in Shas, and we learned this a couple of blot ago. Well, we would have if I didn't ditch you, but I did. So the Gemara says, what? I Pasha didn't have 1 minute to prepare. Just couldn't swing it. Elahada Amar Rava shlichus yad eina tzricha chisaron. Rava lived even later than Rabbah. But if we say the machlokes is this, then Rava is aligned with Beis Shammai. Lema Rava da Amar ki Beis Shammai. Pasha that's not possible. So even this answer number 2, does not work. Ella says the Gemara, let's try answer number 3 of trying to understand the machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, one that doesn't get us in trouble with the Amoraim holding like Beis Shammai. And the Gemara says 10 lines from the top of Mem Gimel Amud Beis, Elahach b'mayaskinan kigon shetiltela lahavi goes lahavi aleha lahavi ale goes los uvishol shalomidas kamiflagi. We're talking about someone who shatiltala, he brought the item that he's watching from you to go get some birds, to go get something. Your item functioned as a stool. So he borrowed your item, not for the sake of your item per se. He had a primary goal in the ladder that he entrusted to you is what you used. So it says the Gemara, Uvishoel shalomi das kamiflage. Famous sugya in Shas. What do we say about a case of shoel shalomi das? Shoel shalomi das means I borrow something from you, but I do it without your knowledge. You have no idea what's happening. You come into my yard and you take my ladder without asking me. Shoel shalomi das. We paskin in halacha, shoel shalomi das is a gazlan. That's considered theft. You're not allowed to do that. So says the Gemara, that is what they're arguing about, kamiflage. That is what they're arguing about in our Mishnah. Beis Shammai savre, shol shalomidas, gazlan habe. And again, that's how we paskin. He says that when you borrow something without permission from the bailim, you're considered a gazlan. And because you're a gazlan, v'chichasar, when there's a reduction in cost of what you're looking at, birshusei didei chasar, you created the reduction in your own property. That's your problem. That's why Beis Shammai holds that we follow the chasar and the yeser. Uveis Hillel savre, they hold the opposite. Shol shalomi das, shoal habe. It's usher for you to do that, but you're not a gazlan. They both agree to the din that you're not allowed to do it. The difference is how we view what you did. Beis Shammai says you're a gazlan, and Beis Hillel says you're not from, but you're a shoel. You're still a shoel. Yes, and then any changes that take place is in your property, so you've caused the reduction or the increase, so you pay for that. That's why Beis Shammai says chaser and yeser. But Beis Hillel says no, you're just a regular shoel, and therefore because I'm a shoel v'chi chasar b'rshusa demar chasar, the actual item is still owned by the original person, and therefore he says Beis Hillel in our Mishnah can't say that we follow chaser and yeser, and therefore because you're only a shoel. In the case of Shol Shalamidas, therefore he holds that it's always Hotzah Spailim. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says that's also a problem. Answer number 3 is also a problem because Elahad Amar Rava Shol Shalamidas L'Rabbanon Gazlan Have Lema Rava de Amar Kibei Shammai. The erudition that they needed to put this Gemara together, they needed to know every sheet of Rava and Rabba. And what does Rava hold? Shol Shalamidas is a Gazlan. So the Gemara doesn't say over here that we actually paskin like Beis Shammai, which would have been a great answer. I don't know why we say that. I didn't look into it. Does Rashi say that? No. The Gemara doesn't say that. But anyways, the Gemara rejects answer number 3 because of that, because Rava seems to say not like Beis Hillel. Elahacha says the Gemara, Bishvach shel gzela kamiflage. We're talking about where an item increases in its value. Beis Shammai says, Shvach gzela de nigzal have, that if I have an item in my property, and the value of that item increases while it's in my property, and I'm a thief, who is the beneficiary of those products? The nigzal, the person stolen from. So let's say I steal your item, and it's in my property, and it increases in value by 2x. Who gets the extra 1x? The principal is 1x, the extra is 1x. Who gets the extra? Here, the Gemara says that really the shvach gzela is the nigzal habe. And because it's of the nigzal, that's what Beis Shammai says. What?
Isn't that like the exact opposite of what he said before?
What did he say before?
When it drops in value, the Gazlan that takes, in other words, if there's any change in value, I thought he said the Gazlan was the one that takes the nigzal. The nigzal?
He said shvach.
No, the shvach. I'm talking about the opposite direction. There's no shvach if the value drops.
It's talking about the other side.
No, I understood. I'm saying, to me, like, it's his property. What does it make a difference if it's shvach or if it's
What case are you comparing to? Which answer of Beis Shammai?
he stole it and the value drops, right? He owns it. Beis Shammai says he owns it.
So Shol Shalomida says that you're a Gazlan, and V'chi Chasar Birshusei Didei Chasar.
So if there's a chasser, he owns the chasser. Because it's kilo like it's his.
But that's only talking about Chisaron. It's not talking about Shvach.
Saying what logic would dictate if it's his, it's his. In other words, whether it's there, that's I'm asking. In other words, whether it's chasser
Right.
or sheva, it's his, it's his.
Right. So I'll just take you back up to one line of the Gemara, which is the second line of this daf, which says, Amar lach Rabba, b'yeser kule alma lo pligi. I understand your question, but we should have asked it up there. I understand your question now. I didn't understand it before. But ki pligi b'chaser. Everyone agrees that b'yeser, everyone agrees to whatever the din is. So we're making this distinction in regards to how we slap the wrist of the nigzal. How do we do that? So at the top of the Gemara, we seem to still embrace this distinction, and I don't know why. Your question is better than my answer. I'm just stating that the distinction is real. And the distinction is that when it comes to yeser, there's one din, as we're now seeing the distinction. When it comes to chisaron, there's another din. So let's try and figure this out. Why would we make a distinction like that? We're trying to assess shlichus yad. Shlichus yad is not real theft. It's not real theft. It's like the step below theft. And Beis Shammai says, Yilake b'cheser v'yeser. Beis Hillel says no. And they don't, and the way we're understanding the Gemara now is they don't disagree on all points. They agree in regards to chaser, and they disagree, chaser? They agree in regards to yeser. Yeah, and they did, you're right. Kipligi b'chaser. That's a great question, Stan. I don't know. But it bothers me. I guess it should bother me if it's a good question. All right, maybe when we finish this cycle, we'll do even 3 more years. Okay, so the Gemara here in answer number 3, answer number 4 says that we're talking about shvach gzela, that when I steal something from you and it improves in its value, the benefits go to the nigzal. Uveis Hillel sabre shvach gzela de gazlan have. Beis Hillel is of the opinion that if I'm holding a product and it improves in my property, then I get to keep it. And says the Gemara, this is actually reflected in another machlokes tanaim. And we'll see in this brisa a very clear example of what this means. Ubeplugta dahani tanaim, Titania, hagozel es harachel. If somebody steals a rachel, which is a female sheep, an ewe, I think EWE, I think it's a. Says the Gemara, Gezaza v'yaldo, while it's on the thief, I stole it. In my property, I sheared the animal, and the animal gave birth. Mishalem osa ve'es gizoseha ve'es vladoseha dibir mer. When the Gazlan pays back, he's giving back everything. He's giving back the animal as it stands, and he's giving back the shearings, and he's giving back the vlados. However, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, gzela chozeres be'enei. Nope, you just give back the animal. You stole an animal, you give back an animal. And afal pi, that the two things are derivatives of the animal, but those you get to keep. This is the same as the machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai had said that shvach gzela goes to the nigzal, meaning everything goes back. That's the sheet of Rab Meir. And Beis Hillel was of the opinion of shvach gzela de gazlan, that the gazlan gets to keep the shearings of vladoseha and the gizoseh, and therefore chozeres be'enei, that is Rabbi Yehuda, is Beis Hillel. And Dekanami, it's reasonable to assume that this is accurate, that this machlokes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is what we said it is. Because it says in a brisa, Beis Shammai omrim yulake b'chaser v'yeser, that we deviate based on what's going on. Namely, that's the shita of Rav Meir. If there's gizoseh and vladoseh, which is shvach, so then yes. And of course, Beis Shammai is even more broad, even chaser. And Beis Hillel omrim kshas hotza shmamina. So that's how the Gemara concludes, that the machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel has to do with shvach gzela de nigzal and shvach gzela de gazlan. And if we look back in our Mishnah, we would see that machlokas seems to click in. This Gemara requires Rishonim. It requires, all Gemaras do, but this is not even so clear even on the Daf. It requires to make sure the puzzle pieces fit right. What? It requires time too, but I'm saying even with a basic shakla v'tarya, it's still hard to make it fit in the Mishnah. But I think one piece that's not clear is the distinction between gzela and shlichus yad. Because even in the Gemara, we make a distinction and say that it's not classic gzela. And that may be a part of what's going on here, is do we view them as the same, yes or no? That brings us to the 2 dots halfway down on Mem Gimel Amud Beis, heading to the end of the parak. Rabbi Akiva Omer Kishas HaTviyah. Rabbi Akiva says that it's based on the time of the claim. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda, who learned under Shmuel, said, Halacha Rabbi Akiva. We paskin like Rabbi Akiva, that we assess the payments not based on what Beis Shammai said, not based on what Beis Hillel said, but rather on the moment that the person is called into Beis Din. If I'm the Gazlan and you finally realize 6 months out that I stole something from you, so what you do is you go to Beis Din and they send me a summons. Phil, you have to show up at Beis Din on Monday. Okay, I show up. That at that moment, the Shas Tviyah, we look at the value. That's how we assess. And Rabbi Yehuda says, the early Amora, he says we paskin like Rabbi Akiva, that we don't follow Beis Shammai or Beis Hillel, but rather we follow Rabbi Akiva. Says the Gemara in the name of Rabbi Yehuda as well, Umoda Rabbi Akiva b'makom sheyesh edim, that when we have edim, we seem to change things up. Let's take a look at Rashi. Rashi is a little bit more than halfway down, right next to where we are. Dibur Amaskal Umoda Rabbi Akiva b'makom sheyesh edim. If we have edim that indicate how much it cost on the day it was stolen, fascinating backtrack. So the Gemara says that when we don't know how much it was worth b'shas hagzela, then we follow Rabbi Akiva, that we follow Shas Tviyah, which is a totally different moment in time. However, the edim can send us back to Shas Gzela. It makes it seem like the ideal would really be to charge Kishas Gzela, but we don't always know. Okay, Nebuch, we'll do Shas Tviyah. That's what it seems like. My taima, why is it that this is true? Because the Amar Kra, La Asher Hulo, Yitnenu b'yom hashmaso, on the day of your guilt. On the day of your guilt is when you're brought into Bezdin. And if in fact there are edim from that moment, namely the moment of Gzela, that's when we're going to bill you from. We're going to look back to when we can. Your Shas Ashma is either when you're called into Bezdin, if we don't know when the Gzela was, or with edim and we do know when the Gzela was, then we charge you accordingly. Amrle Rav Oshai Rav Yehuda. Wait 1 second. Wait, Rav Yehuda, you cannot say that. You can't say that we hold like Rabbi Akiva, but with the caveat that that Eidim would take us back to Shas Gzela. Rebbe, Ata Omer Kain. Rebbe, this language of Rebbe is toward Rabbi Yehuda. I know Rebbe we typically say is Rabbi Nasi. Here it's not. Rav Oshaya was saying to Rabbi Yehuda, Rebbe Ata Omer Kain, Hachi Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan. Chalukai Rabbi Akiva, Afila b'makom sheyesh edim. When Rabbi Akiva in our Mishnah from the bottom of Mem Gimel Amud Aleph argued on Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, he argued even b'makom sheyesh edim. Namely, we do not go back to Shas Gzela ever, according to Rabbi Akiva. We only follow Shas Tvia. It's not a din b'di'evet that we don't know when the Gzela was. We don't care when the Gzela was. We hold like Shas Tvia. And when Rabbi Akiva was pushing against our Mishnah, he was doing so strongly. My taima. Why is that? For the same pasuk that you just read, because the pasuk says, "La'asher hu lo yitzanenu b'yom hashmaso ubeidino hu dekamachai v'le'ashma." Bezdin is the one who's saying you did something wrong. So when Bezdin calls you calls you into Bezdin with a summons, you're done. You're done. That's when we measure. Forget it. There seems to be a machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda's understanding of Rabbi Akiva and Rav Oshai's understanding of Rabbi Akiva of whether or not Gzela was really the lechatchila time, but Nebuch we don't know, and therefore we go to the moment of Tviyah, yes or no. That seems to be the machlokas between them. Amar le Reb Zer le Rabbi Abba bar Papa. Ki az las lahasam, when you go up to Eretz Yisrael, Akif Asulma Detzur, please take a little bit of a circuitous route and go to Sulma Detzur, the ladder of Tzur. It was a place that seemingly had a steep incline. Ve'ol legabed Reb Yaakov bar Idi, and please go to the great Rav Reb Yaakov bar Idi. Ubaymine ishmiya le Reb Yochanan halacha Reb Akiva o ein halacha Reb Akiva, and please go ask Reb Yochanan whether or not we really paskin like Reb Akiva in the way that it was presented to us by Rav Asi, which is that we paskin like Rabbi Akiva fully in regard to Yom Tviyah, ignoring Eidim no matter what they say. Amar le, hachi amar Rav Yochanan. He found Rav Yochanan, and what did he say? Halakha Rabbi Akiva la'olam. Is that a broad comment? What does that mean? Halakha Rabbi Akiva la'olam? Everywhere? Always? That's for sure not true. My la'olam. What does it mean when it says la'olam? Amar Rav Ashi, shelo tomar hani mili hecha deleka edim. Don't say we only hold like Rabbi Akiva when there are no edim. Aval hecha deika edim lo. But where there are edim, we don't hold like Rabbi Akiva. Kamash malan, that's not the case. Rabbi Yochanan paskin that we always hold like Rabbi Akiva, and seemingly the initial presentation of Rabbi Yehuda was wrong, and the knech, the little qualification of we hold like Rabbi Akiva except when there are edim is not correct. And really, Rabbi Akiva was through and through mishas tviyah from the time of the claim. V'inami, there is another possibility that if the shomer was sholeach yad de'ahadra leduchta and he put it back in its place v'itavra and it broke la'afu came to Rabbi Shmuel. There's an exclusion in this shita as well. De amar lo ba'inan das bailam kamashmalan de ba'inan das bailam. There's another possible way to understand what la'olam means, and that means that it could be that we need das bailam, which means that if I give back your item and I used it when I shouldn't have, I need to tell you. Otherwise, I've not done my job of returning that which I took. So that's what the Gemara could also mean. Rava Amar halacha kebeis Hillel. Obviously, this is not a pashut piece of Gemara because even within the Gemara, they're clear in the Amoraim that we don't know what Tana we hold like. Rabbi Yehuda wanted to say black on white that it's Rabbi Akiva. Rav Oshaya held like a different version of Rabbi Akiva, just like Rabbi Yochanan did. Rava held like neither of them and said the din's like Beis Hillel. And if you look in the Rishonim, it seems like we paskin like Mishamai. So it's really a very difficult Gemara as it relates to Psak Halacha. Really is quite difficult. Last Mishnah in the Parak, Baruch Hashem. I only thought about taking that which was yours. I wasn't actually going to do anything. Balei Tosfos over here adds something very interesting. The last Tosfos in the Parak. Hach machshava have dibur. This is not just thinking. This is actually and only verbalizing, but without touching. And says the Gemara, we're not going to obviously get into this. Could the Yalev me'al kol davar? We'll see in a minute. That's the pasuk on the top of Mem Daled Amud Aleph. V'chein machshavas pigol nami have bedibur v'lo belev. So here, when we say in our Mishnah that it's hachoshev lishloach yad bepikadon, we don't mean choshev only. We mean you verbalized it. Okay, so let's just explain this the right way according to the Baalei Tosfos. If in fact I say that I plan to touch the item that you've entrusted to me, Beishamai Omrim Chayev, that will then make you liable. Liable for what? Take a look at Rashi, 7 lines from the bottom of the page. Jibramaschal Chayev, Be'onsin. You're a Chayev for everything. You're a Shoel. That's unbelievable. You go from being a Shomer to a Shoel just by saying I plan on using your item, just in the words. Uveis Hillel Omrim Sari, Eino Chayev ad sheyishlach bo yad. Your words are not enough. Your machshava, your dibur, again, assuming that everyone agrees to the Baalei Tosfos, your dibur is not enough. You have to actually use it. You're not a shoel till you use it. So it says the Gemara, Shene'emar, imlo shalach yada b'mleches re'ehu. Beis Hillel has a beautiful pasuk as a raya. If you don't touch it, then you can't possibly be a shoel. So the Mishnah then continues with another case. 4 lines from the bottom. Hita es hachavis, if you tilt over the chavis. So one portion of the round bottom of the barrel is still on the ground. You tilt it over. You're not going to pick up a 200-pound barrel of wine. You're not such a beast. So you tilt it over. You wanted to pour out a revius of wine. In the process, vinishbara, and it breaks. Einu mishalim ela revius. Because you poured in a responsible way, you're only chayiv for the revius. Something was wrong with the barrel. This is a normal way to pour out of a barrel. You're pater on everything else other than the revius that you poured. Higbia v'natal hemenu revius v'nishbara. If Og Melech HaBashan comes down to the cellar, he's like, I can pick this up. And he picks up the whole thing, and he pours, and then it breaks, mishalim to make kula. This is not a normal way to pour, and therefore, you are done. Rashi actually says it's not so much about normal and abnormal. Look at the last Rashi on the page. Higbia v'natal, if Og Melech HaBashan picks up the whole barrel, to have a kniya b'hag bahasa. Unbelievable. That's a kinyan just by picking it up. So it's a little different than we were thinking in the Mishnah. It's not just about usage, because you used it when you tilted it. But your achrai is to pay for the damages of the whole barrel changes when you mamish pick it up and do hagba. Which means that the tilting of the barrel, let's say my elbow is the bottom of the barrel, I'm just tilting to pour, is different than picking it up. This is not a kinyan, but picking something up is a kinyan. So these are nafkaminas la'alacha. Says the Gemara at the top of Mem Daled Amud Aleph, just a few minutes to go until the next Maariv. Hopefully we'll make it. Hopefully you've all davened. Minani mili. How do we know that all of this is true? Rashi says, Sheyishlach yad v'chein asa. That these two things, the first part and the second part of the Mishnah, how do we know this is true? The Tana Rabbana. Al kol dvar pesha. What does the word kol mean? Beishamai omrim melamid. We learn from the word kol shechayiv al machshava k'maisa. Kol is a broadening word, and it's an inclusionary word. And it seems to be that machshava is therefore kemaisa because we needed to include something. What does kol come to teach us? It wasn't framed in the regular way of kol asu yemai, but nevertheless, that's seemingly what he means. I can prove to you, Beis Shammai says to Beis Hillel, that you're wrong. And the only time you ever become fully achroi, like a shoel, is when you actually touch that item. And the Brisa says that Beis Shammai retorts back, Amru lem Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, V'alo kvar ne'amar al kol dvar pesha. Well, we already have a pasuk that talks about this, and what does the word kol mean to you? By me, says Beis Shammai, kol means that machshava is kedibur. What do you do with it? Amru lem Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. I have the other pasuk that already tells me that it has to be in your hand. This machlokas seems to be pasuk against pasuk. It's not. What Beis Hillel is saying is, can you read Hebrew? What does the pasuk say? Im lo shalach yado b'mleches re'ehu. Don't quote me al kol dvar pesha with your drasha. I have a mefurish, a pasuk that says you're not chayiv until you touch it. Don't give me your drashas. This is exactly what the pasuk means b'pashtus. Im kain matam olomar al kol dvar pesha. What then would Beis Hillel do with kol? Sheyachol ainli elahu. I might have thought that it only would have been problematic if I, the shomer, was the one who touched the item. But Omar la'avdo v'lishlucha menayin, if I told one of my employees to do it and it wasn't me, how do I know you're still chayiv? Talmud lomar al kol dvar pesha. The inclusionary word kol comes to say it's not just me, the shomer of your item, who's sholeach yad. It's anyone in my ecosystem who touches your. Stop touching his stuff. If you're going to touch it, you're going to be chayiv. That's what kol means. Not just the shomer, even my eved, even my family. So he pushes back heavily. Gemara doesn't even come back to Beis Hillel, to Beis Shammai. You're just done. Last sugya for the night. Hita sachavis. If you tilt the chavis, amar rabba lo shanu ela nishbara. We're only talking about a case where it's nishbara. Aval echmitza. If the wine turned and became vinegary, mishalim eskula. My taima cares. Why is that your problem? Why isn't that ones rachmana patre? And you're not a shoel yet because you didn't pick it up. Says the Gemara, because it's something that we don't know about wine, or that maybe isn't even accurate today. I don't know. Says the Gemara, my taima. Why is it that if you only tilt the barrel and you take out a revius of wine, so now there's a little bit of air in the top of the barrel, why is it that that makes you chayev on the hichmitz if it all vinegarizes? That's not a word, by the way, right? It's probably not a word. It's definitely not a word. Turned. Let's go with regular English. Where's Mark? Where we just turned it. Says the Gemara, Gire dide hu de ahanule. Your arrow is what led to this issue, namely, because you donated to the cause. When you remove wine from the barrel, it no longer has the chance of staying fresh. Let's put it in our own parlance. Once you crack the bottle and you take something out of it, it's no longer the aging bottle, even if you put the cork back in. So therefore, that's your fault. If you pick it up and then you take out your revius by picking it up, Amar Shmuel lo natal mamish. This is true, even if you don't even end up keeping what you take out. The second you picked it up, afilu lo natal, even if you don't take anything out, the din is, if it then breaks, you're mishalim dmei kula, just picking it up. Lema kasavar Shmuel shlichus yad in atzricha chisara. Maybe this teaches us that he holds like the shita of Beis Shammai, which he cannot hold like, of Eina Tzricha Chisaron, that by Shlichus Yad, you don't have to actually touch the item. So says the Gemara, Amre, no, that's not correct. Lo. Shiny Hacha, this case is different. The Nicha led to Tehave Hachavis, and we skip the word Kula, Basis Laharavis. We want the Revius to be in there. It's not a case of Eina Tzricha Chisaron. This is a very difficult line in the Gemara. Rashi spends a good 12 lines trying to explain it. And just look at the second half of that Rashi, Dibra Maskil Denicha. Rashi says, Aval, last word on the line in the Rashis, 12, 15, maybe 20 lines down. Aval yayin she'enu mishtamer el beklimale. Wine is really only protected when it's in a full barrel. So havalei kimishanatal v'hinichu im hashar. It's as if you took something art lishtamer v'nasa shoel al kol sha'ar hachavis. We theoretically assume that you've taken wine out and put it back in. Why is that the case? See in the Rishonim. And the last part for today is Boy Rav Ashi, Higbia Arniki Litol Hemena Dinar Mahu. Let's say I pick up your wallet that I'm watching with intent to remove something. Do we say it's like Chamra, Hu Delo Minter Ela Agav Chamra, that all the money is better protected in the wallet, just like all the wine is better protected in the barrel? Aval Zuza Mintar, maybe wine is one way, but coins are different. No Dilma Shiny Nitirusa de Arniki Nitirusa de Dinar. Can we compare these two things of protecting a wallet and protecting coins separately? Teku, we have no idea. Hadran Allah Hamafkid Baruch Hashem. We finished the third parak of Maseches Bava Metzia. On Shabbos, we'll pick up with Mem Daled Amud Aleph and Mem Daled Amud Beis and Mem Hey, as much of it as we can. Wishing you, Yehiratzu, we should come back to this daf in 7.5 years. Yirtzeh Hashem, we will pick up again on Shabbos at 6 o'clock. Wishing you all a beautiful night.